Good evening. Welcome to the live stream tonight. It's just going to be self-tuning, so ECU related, mapping related, basically anything to do with the standard ECU, aftermarket ECUs like Link or Cyvex or Alcatech or any other really, but because essentially they all do the same job as far as the aftermarket ECUs are concerned. So taking live questions, any questions you got related to mapping, tuning, ECUs, how to do certain things, things to avoid, then fire them at me. I will answer them to the best of my ability. Obviously I'm limited by time tonight because my voice normally goes after about an hour. It might be slightly less tonight, but yeah, normal questions or standard questions, if you could save those to next week, that'd be much appreciated. Just want to kind of keep this just as a self-tuning and tuning related sort of live stream, if that's possible. We will see. As far as what I want to kind of go through is just answering your questions on this. The questions I will give as full an answer as I can, but if you want more detailed answers or one-to-one help with tuning your car, then click on the link below for join, and I run an academy with a load more videos, Discord server that there's a load of guys on there that if I'm not around will answer your questions or give you as much help and advice as possible. But yeah, there is a link at the bottom of the video for that. Click on join, and Academy member upwards gives you access to all the extra videos. And you know, there are much more videos for me to record. It's just time permitting, because obviously I am full-time mapping Subarus only, and I've been doing it for forever, it seems. Although I still love it. So, self-tuning. Why would you self-tune? Bit of control. Maybe you haven't got a mapper near you. Maybe you haven't got a mapper in your country even. And, you know, curiosity. You know, maybe you've tuned cars with carburetors and it's just kind of extending that beyond. And, yeah, why not? Because it's possible. You know, tuning your own car is ultimately, you can get as good results as a pro tuner, and in some cases better, because you have the advantage of time that a tuner hasn't got. You know, unless you're paying them to have your car for a week, or, you know, a week every season to make sure that it's ultimately the same in every season. You know, you've got that advantage because you're living with the car day in, day out. You can spot little things that are just happening. And, you know, as you get into the process, you can, you know, data log, look into the data log, see what's happening, fix it, and then move on. It is simple to tune your own car, but it's not always easy to start with. You know, there are lots of right ways to do things, to do them properly and to do them safely. But there are some wrong ways as well. And I do go through that in some of the videos that I've done for the Academy members in particular. Right, I can see we've got a load of people already in here. Some of the Academy members. Hi Tom, hi Ben, hi Mel, hi Corinne, Moshiko, Pat, hi Shane, Neil, Naviz, oh blimey, loads. Right, okay. Oh, actually, right, okay, very interesting question there. Right. Okay, so yeah, fire your questions in. If you put a Q at the beginning of it, it makes it a lot easier for me to see what is a question and what is not a question, what's just a comment or a chatting amongst yourself. Why not? You know, people around the world watch this, and it amazes me every single week where people are watching from. So if you're joining from, you know, wherever you are, just say where you are, say hi, because, you know, we get a new country every week. Right, so it's not easy, but it is, you know, straightforward. It is simple. There's various things that you need to do. I got tagged in a Facebook post recently, which was quite hilarious, because they were arguing about whether to use deck cans or not, and there were people coming up with all kinds of reasons why you shouldn't be using them, because the ECUs are like super advanced and the sensor is amazing and it would do this, that, and the other. But every week, because I'm tuning these cars every day, I hear detonation on my deck cans that the ECU doesn't hear. So, you know, is it worth wearing deck cans and making sure that your ECU is hearing what your ears are hearing? For the sake of £40 in the UK to make a set of the deck cans that I made in the video, it's most definitely worth it. I've got no idea, unless they've got some superhuman hearing or you know, some magic secret sauce that enables them to trust the ECU. I don't know how people can tune without deck cans, and I would certainly run away from any tuner that tried to tune, especially a Subaru, but any car without deck cans. Right, okay, so we got some questions, we got some comments. Right, yeah, as Ben says, he's heard that a few times when he's been mapping his car. He's one of our Academy members. You'll remember his car from the front mount versus top mount. But he's mapping his own car now. He's even mapping his friends' cars. Because once you develop the skills to do it, then, you know, friends are going to ask you to, just have a look at mine, see what it's doing. And these sort of things snowball. And this is how I started, you know, 18, 19 years ago. I was just mapping my own car. It was never supposed to be a business. But I then got asked or twisted my arm by a friend to map his. We went to a dyno day and came first and second. And then other people wanted to talk to me about mapping their car. And from then on, it was a bit of a crazy story. So, yeah, ECU doesn't hear it. Even on, you know, the advanced 32-bit ECUs. I was mapping a Hatch STI on Tuesday. An almighty cracker deck. ECU heard nothing. That was about 5,500 RPM, so not even beyond the bit where the ECU is kind of deaf to it. It's like at the peak of where an ECU or an engine is going to detonate. So deck cans, make a set, use them. They are brilliant to hear. And, you know, if you watch the couple of videos that I've done on detonation, you start to understand what it sounds like, and yeah, you can then tune accordingly and safely, because there will be people telling you that you're going to blow your engine up. If you're using the tools, the wideband, the deck cans, and following a process simply and smoothly and easily, you shouldn't have any problems, unless there's an underlying issue with the engine, like the big end bearings are extremely worn, or poor maintenance, or bad oil, or really bad fuel. Then you shouldn't have any issues. Right. Boom, 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 boom. Okay, a few questions. Right. Okay. First question, Steve. How good are the Alcatec ECU? Presumably you have the cable and the dongle. They are perfectly adequate for tuning, for running even a high-powered Subaru. You know, anything from standard power up to, I think the most I've had on an Alcatec is about 700. And then we swapped over to a Cyvex because we wanted data logging, because we wanted, safety features, like oil pressure trips, oil temperature trips, coolant temperature trips, full wideband fueling. So it will do, the Alcatech will do, different boost maps, or high boost, low boost, or normal fuel, methanol, or normal fuel on a 95 RON map. It will do most things, so they're perfectly capable. And there's some, some of these that are for sale on eBay, which will do a job really nicely, so long as you got the dongle and the cable, because the dongles and the cables aren't available anymore. So if you haven't got those, the ECU is locked to the original mapper. I've got hundreds of patches for these where I've supplied them to the customer and mapped the car originally, but if I haven't got the patch, then there's no way of getting the patch in the future, unfortunately. But they're a decent ECU, and it's a shame that they stopped making them. Right, thanks Josh for the question. Thoughts on using ChatGPT to analyse data logs and suggest changes? I have experimented with this because I think ultimately there is some place for AI to be involved in the process, even at the basic stage, like at the moment, using it to analyse data. I would be interested to see what it suggests from data logs. I'm not sure how you can upload the data or the data logs to ChatGPT, but it would be certainly an interesting process. I think there is potential ultimately for if we've still got petrol engine cars, for just a target ignition timing, and then just using AI and a really high sample rate to say, just work on a knock sensor. But I think we're a long way away from that. But yeah, it'd be interesting. Are you looking at that, Josh, to see whether it can do it? Right. Okay, I'll probably avoid that because that's not really a tuning question. Fitted missing air chamber and inner wing on the FSTI and little scoop inside the bay, and seems to have gained 0.1 bar boost now. Yeah, it might be to do with it's a smoother airflow going into the MAF sensor. It might just be coincidental. It might be the air pressure has come down in your area, Neil, and the ECU is targeting an absolute pressure. So it might be that it's still getting to the same absolute pressure of boost, but the atmospheric pressure is lower. So the differential, i.e. the boost, is slightly higher. Might be that. Where are we at? Right. Right. Hi, Steve. Right. Hi, Duncan. How do you use Carberry on ECU edit? Carberry ROM. I've talked through it in the last one of these that I did. Is a hack. To effectively run speed density, so map manifold pressure based fueling and ignition rather than the MAF sensor based fueling and ignition like the standard ECU. There are XML definitions that are available, but they are for ECU edit and for ROM Raider. To get it to show those tables in ECU edit, you need to import that XML data so that it can then translate the actual binary file, the hex file from the ECU into readable tables. I upload the XML that I use to the Discord server for the Academy members, so if you joined the Academy, you would get a copy of all the XML files that I use, including some of the experimental ones that aren't 1,000,000% tested. But the Carberry ones for 3.65, 3.85 and 4.2 versions of Carberry are up there for ECU Edit. And the next Academy members live video is going to be on Carberry, and there'll be a few coming on Carberry and on Link. Okay, right. Boom, 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 boom. Can you swap a Outback 2010 EJ25 into 2008? Will the ECU be the same? Will it be the same? The actual physical hardware of the ECU is probably the same. The ROM file that is in the hardware almost definitely isn't, because there will be some extra bits within the CAN bus system that may confuse things. It should work, if we're just talking about the basic engine, because it's all got the same elements in there. They're both a EJ engine with the same sensors, so it should work. But I don't think you'd be able to move the ECU from the 2010 into the 2008. Okay, yeah, that is it. Very interesting, Josh. I'll be very interested if you wanted to email that to me at duncan@racedynamics.com. I'll be interested to see it. I have experimented with asking it text-based questions, and yeah, it's quite incredible as to what it can do. I don't think it'll be taking over my job just yet, though, but who knows. Right. The side feed injectors aren't as good. The spray patterns don't tend to be as good as the top feed injectors. The bigger top feed injectors now, even the what was I tuning today? A car with 1250cc injectors, and that idle very smoothly at 900 RPM. Bang on lambda, so it wasn't an issue with spray patterns or atomization of the fuel. Whereas the bigger side feed injectors tend to be a little bit more industrial, shall we say. They get the fuel in there, but it's not pretty as to where it goes and how atomized it is. And some of the modified side feed injectors that were designed to flow a lot more with a different cap. I've had quite a few cases where the different nozzle, the cap on the injector, actually came off into the cylinder and hydrolocked the engine, which was obviously pretty catastrophic. So top feeder would always be my suggestion. If you can go top feed, do the top feed conversion. Boom, 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 boom. Hi mate. I had a question about the photo of your spark plugs. Yeah, the picture looked like the spark plugs were running lean. But your wideband says it isn't, and your wideband, I believe, is pretty new, so it should be reading right. possible that it might be worth checking, maybe putting a different sensor in there, see whether it's showing the same values, or checking the wiring for the wideband. I know for the LM2 that I use, they supply the kit with a cigarette or a cigar lighter adapter for it, power adapter, but that really gives skewy wideband readings. They're much better when they're hardwired. Yeah, I have seen spark plugs like that when it isn't running lean. It tends to be sort of weird fuel that does it. I don't know I think you did say what the ethanol content was in your area. I think it was about 7%. So it shouldn't really be producing that, but there might be other additives in there that are cleansing. Maybe a particular thing with your location that have different cleansers in the fuel that will do that to spark plugs. Hi Duncan, Merry Christmas. Yeah, hi. Right. Mapped a EJ207 short blocks with EJ205 heads. Yes, lots of those. It's a really easy build to get an EJ207 bottom end and put the standard WRX heads on it. It's a strong engine. You're limited power-wise probably to high 400s because of the cams and the springs, and even the shims over the buckets on the EJ205 heads. But it's a strong engine, and if the bottom end goes on a WRX engine, I certainly wouldn't put an EJ205 bottom end in. I'd put a 207 in there because why not? It's stronger, and cost-wise, it's peanuts difference. But map loads of those. They're a good engine. Right. Excuse me. Right. Good evening, Ramon. I'm guessing you're in the US of A. Novice question: Subaru NA 2017 2.5, just with a throttle body spacer and cold air intake, how much extra horsepower can be added? Ooh, I have to be perfectly honest and say I rarely see an NA Subaru for tuning. I can't remember the last one I did on the dyno. It was probably a BRZ or a BRZ as you call it. I would have to say I don't know the answer to that. The intake and the exhaust are the main mods that you can do on an NA engine before, until you start sort of changing the cams and whatever, but that's a really expensive process. I'm sorry, I don't know the answer to that, Ramon. Right, let me have a little slurp of Orangina. Okay, so hardwired Innovate MTX new sensor, just now recalibrate it. You've got to do a fresh air calibration on those. You take it out the exhaust and do the calibration process. The Bosch sensors, I don't find them particularly reliable. Probably get through 2 or 3 a year on those, and that's with it sort of moving car to car in my wideband that I put in the tailpipe. If it was on a full-time install, maybe once a year would be about par for the course, and if it lasts longer than that, then great. But I think your kit is new. Is there a noticeable difference on 200 cell cutted downpipes? Look at the UK company with a snake logo. Um, Noticeable difference compared to what, a D-cat or a 100 cell. I still think the best sports cat downpipe is the Pro Drive sports cat downpipe. Even after all these years, they still work. I've rarely seen one with a problem, rarely seen one that's blocked or deconstructed itself. Whereas a lot of the aftermarket companies, at the cheaper end, the exhaust or the cats are good enough to get through an MOT maybe twice, 3 times, and then the third or the fourth time you really have to get them smoking hot before they'll pass an MOT test. Power wise, there is a difference between the 200 cell and a D-cat. Any restriction that you put in the exhaust is going to restrict the amount of air that can come out of the engine. And if you're restricting the amount of air that can come out of the engine, you're restricting what can go in. And it's fresh air with nice oxygen in there that makes power. So yeah, you on a 400 horsepower car, you're probably losing 20 horsepower from having a cat or a sports cat. Okay, Lynn Osfoz, hi. Does low ignition advance multiplier get triggered by anything other than debt? I'm getting 0.5 and 0.3 after I reflash. Hot ambient 35. Oh, nice. In Australia. Yes. First off, there is a setting when it's probably easy if I show you. You probably know this already, but I'll do it anyway. Right, if I open up just a what you're saying, 0.3, right? Okay, let me shut that one down and open up a 32-bit ECU. Okay, Forester STI. So in the settings in the map, there's an initial advanced multiplier initial. So that's what will show after you reflash it. So your advanced multiplier will show immediately 0.25. If you wanted to change that to 1, which is the maximum, then there's no downside for doing that. But it's probably worth sort of getting the mapping done and making sure that it isn't detting before you're setting it up to the maximum advance at that stage. But that's one part. So if you've got that set to 1 and it's still going down to 0.5 or 0.3 sort of immediately after you've reflashed it, then it's probably a heat shield. They're getting quite old now, some of these cars, and the uppipe heat shield in particular is really prone to there's only, I think there's 4 tack welds on there that are put on from the factory, and the tack welds, because that part is getting hot, cold, hot, cold, hot, cold, or very hot, very cold, the welds break and the heat shields rattle, and the ECU hears that, thinks it's debt, tries to do something about it by taking ignition timing out, eventually drops the advanced multiplier down. Could be that. If that's just in the normal sort of running territory, I'd like to see the logs just to see what it's actually doing. But make a set of deck cans. If you bolt that to anywhere on the inlet manifold, it will tell you. Your ears won't be able to not hear the sound of detonation that's causing that much of a drop in the advanced multiplier. For the sake of making a set, it solves the question. Is it detonation or is it a heat shield? or knocking, I've had fuel clips just resonating on the inlet manifold that have done it. People blanking off dump valve returns with a metal bung and that just knocking on the inlet manifold or the engine block, that can do it. It's not just detonation, it's a noise that it has to take some severe action, or it thinks it has to. Hope you're good. Yes, I am. Yeah, it's been a really long week so far. My throat is killing me. Thank you very much. I haven't seen about the stolen Sierra Cosworth Sapphire, but yeah, God, beautiful car. And if someone's pride and joy is being stolen, then the motoring community in whatever country that car will end up in needs to get it back to its owner. Thank you very much, Joe. Yeah, I won't say see you next week, but yeah, I'll see you on Tuesday. Did I manage to get the Hot Wheels preface? No, I didn't. I'm gonna have to search for that on eBay. There must be some. The Cyvex Powers WR1 it was made. He was looking for 600. We made 607 horsepower today on that. So yeah, he was quite pleased, even though he couldn't move because his back was dead. But yeah, it did well. So as did Nomads. Yeah, did really well. Yeah, I'm seeing it a lot on heat shields. Had a car in that was a Monday. The header cross pipe on the headers was rattling at one end. The up pipe was rattling at both ends. Managed to weld those, and the down pipe was rattling, but we changed that for a decat. So got rid of one of those problems, but there was still two rattles. Solved those and mapped the car today and made 381. No detonation, no random knock events. But I tune with the deck cans on all the time, so I know, if it's dead, I hear it. If it's not dead, then I need to locate what's causing it. Yeah, David, how's the Forester STI? Yeah, it's really good, but it's sitting at the side of the unit at the moment. I've been so flat out busy. Normally this time of year it does start to die down work-wise, but I'm sure it's the YouTube effect and people are, I'm busy, and I think already this week I'm like 60 hours of work. We're only on Thursday. As soon as it's finished, I'll be doing an oil change on Monday on that, and hopefully go on the dyno on Tuesday. On Wednesday, is it Tuesday or Wednesday? Tuesday or Wednesday, one of the two. And it will be videoed. It will be on the channel. Right. Okay. Hey Duncan, when you're tuning for bigger injectors or just generally tuning, what air fuel correction and air fuel learning numbers percentage are you aiming for? Ideally 0, but anything less than 5% correction, i.e. short-term correction, is acceptable. To get it completely within that is almost impossible, but as a general trend, sort of plus or minus 5%, just so that the corrections you're getting are kind of all at sort of either side of the line, rather than it's always adding 10% or 15%. because if the weight of the curve is above the line, it's going to add fuel in the learning. So ideally I want the learning to be as close to zero as possible. And certainly I don't want it ever really to be going negative, because if it does, the negative long-term learning for the fueling in the last part of the MAF range that's in closed loop, so sort of 20 grams per second up to 50, then if it's having to learn to take 5% of fuel out there, not a major issue for that particular area. But what it actually does is it thinks it's doing you a favour by taking 5% of fuel out everywhere beyond that. So if you've tuned the car to 11.5 AFR and then the ECU learns to take another 5% out of that, it could take it to quite dangerous areas. So I want to see that as close to zero as possible. And if it isn't zero, then I'd prefer to see a positive number than a negative one. Right, spec on the 600 WR1 turbo was a GT35 Gen 2, 1250 injectors, Cyvex ECU, GT spec headers, full decat. There was a 2.5 closed deck, I believe with liners. I certainly hope it was with liners. He said it was, so I trust him. Yeah, there was 2 bar raising, sort of rising up to 2.1 bar boost, and yeah, made 607. It's going to do more when he comes back with some methanol in the new year. So I think that will probably do 7 on methanol. Oh gosh. Sequential. Right, okay. I'm presumably not talking about the twin turbo legacy setup, because as with all the things that Subaru do, or almost all the things, they test them on the legacy, and if they work, they put them on the Imprezas. And if there's any bits left over, they go on the Foresters. Because the twin turbo setup was only on the legacy, you can naturally assume that it didn't work, and it didn't work. It's quirky. There's a horrible valley of death in the middle, because the changeover from the small turbo to the big turbo just made it feel really weird. It's one of the reasons why I've taken that setup off Mike Blitzen and just gone with one proper size turbo, or I will be going with one proper size turbo. Yeah, the process, yeah, you need to, if you're building a small one with a big one following it up, you need to have a way of spooling the bigger one up at the same time as the small one, rather than the Subaru way where it was one and then this gap and then the second. So the ideal would be to have them both getting some kind of airflow or exhaust flow at the same time, so that there's just a natural progression from small to large. But the bigger turbos now are really efficient, really design well, and they'll spool up. I don't, if you're wanting to spool up on a turbo at 2000 RPM, then buy a diesel. The proper size turbo will build boost, and it's nice to have a bit of foreplay waiting for the turbo. But if you're down too low in the rev range, you're in the wrong gear. Right, boost error is typical across the rev range when tuning initial and maximum wastegate duty. Oh god, typical. Generally, I want the car to just get to the boost target. I don't want it to overshoot it. So generally, you'll always have a positive boost error. You certainly should always have a positive boost error, i.e. it's just below the boost target. It's more controllable that way, so you give it the initial starting point and the maximum wastegate duty, generally about 10% difference between the two. And in a third gear pull, if the actual wastegate duty that you're needing to get to the boost target, or almost to the boost target, should be sitting kind of midway between those two, like the initial and the maximum, so that, you know, in second gear it's got a chance of making more boost or as much boost, because it will just naturally add more wastegate duty up to the maximum. And then generally speaking, I'll put in gear related reduction for fourth and fifth gear and sixth gear if it's a 6-speed box, just to drop the wastegate duty maximum and initials down so that it's not overshooting in those gears. Obviously the gear related duty compensations aren't in every ROM, so it varies. Yeah. Yes, you could, but to be honest, there's a massive great gearbox in the way. There is a way to do it, but not the way that Subaru had, with one turbo on one bank and the other turbo on the other bank, or, you know, separated that far. If they're sat next to each other, then you would have a much smaller valley of death. And then you could, you know, have like computer controlled diverter valve that opened gradually rather than just the bam. That the biggest issue was the volume of the pipework that it needed to fill, sort of like for one turbo to the next. It was was a problem. One turbo is enough, and nitrous. Is the wastegate spring tension enough if the wastegate duty is maxed out? It could be that, or it could be just the turbos run out of capacity to flow enough air to fill the engine. So if you're trying to fill a 2.5 engine with a TD04, even with a 2-bar wastegate spring in there, it's not going to make 2-bar all the way up, because it cannot physically supply that amount of air. It could be that the spring pressure is too low. Like if you've got a big turbo, GT35 or something, for example, from today, and if you had half a bar actuator and trying to run 2-bar boost, it wouldn't be able to do that. So it could be, for a big turbo, it could be the issue, but most often with most of the turbos that we get to play with, even running 100% duty with a 1.5 bar spring, it's not going to do 1.5 bar, just because the turbo is not big enough. Right, how am I doing for questions? Just oh, here we go. Missed that one. When you map at 1.7 bar on petrol, do you map petrol and meth at 1.7 bar or higher? It depends. The easiest way would be to just run the same boost, but if adding more boost will add more power, then I'll add more boost. generally, if you've stopped at 1.7 bar on petrol, that might be within the turbo's sort of upper end of its efficiency. So if you are trying to push the turbo too much, then would actually generate more heat and lose power, because with the methanol you're able to add more ignition time and run it slightly leaner. You can kind of overcome that heat issue, so you could run more boost on methanol. Quite often with the cars with flex fuel, there'll be a different boost level for normal fuel and a different boost level for flex. So 40% methanol, for example. Not a tuning question, but I'll let you have it anyway, Steve. Any way of getting rid of the coolant expansion tank after fitting a front mount? No, it needs the coolant expansion tank, and it needs to be a significant size. The standard Subaru coolant is, I think the maximum that container holds is 2 litres. The lowest level is I think half a litre, and the highest is 1.5 litres. So it needs to expand by about a litre. If your expansion bottle is less than a litre, then you'll always run the risk of spitting some coolant out, and if it spits it out, it can't draw it back in when it cools down, and you'll always have to keep topping up the coolant level. It's one of the issues with some of the cheaper front mount intercooler kits, is they give you a tiny little bottle, probably about the same size as this Orangina can, and it's just not enough to hold the expanded liquid. Right, any more questions? Ideal turbo setup. Ideal turbo. Everyone's got their own idea of ideal. For me, in a classic, it's a turbo that's going to get me to 350 horsepower. In a new age, like Blob or Bug or Hawkeye, 400 to 450 horsepower sort of turbo, like a VF 400 for those, I think is perfect. For the Forester, my Forester STI, the last one, was running an RCM 500 turbo, but because I was still running the top mount, I was happy with 450. 450 for a daily driver with a bit of turbo lag. Great, I don't mind a little bit of turbo lag. It just encourages me to change gear if I want to have fun, or you can drive off boost quite easily. Having said that, TD04 is a lovely daily driver in a WRX. It's a good turbo. It depends whether you want power and daily driver. Right, any more? Or am I going to shut this off early because everyone's feeling sorry for my croaky voice, or just can't stand my croaky voice? Yeah, Billy, or hybrids. Yeah, the hybrids. When this hybrid turbo thing was first sort of invented, or promoted, probably 10-15 years ago, 15 probably, it just meant that someone had put stuff in a turbo that wasn't designed to be in there. A lot of the time it didn't work. Some of the time it just, the nuts fell off the front of the turbos and turbos destroyed themselves. It just meant that they created a Frankenstein of a turbo. People are getting better at it. Some people are getting really good at it. And the hybrid turbos now is like hybrid TD04. So it's TD04 framework, like on Zed's car. It's 350 360 horsepower. I've had 390 out of a TD04 hybrid on V-Power on a WRX, 390 horsepower. Yeah, billet, you know, the wheel designs means they can do sexier things with the wheels, and they're pretty cool. Right. Yeah, the Andy F TDF4 was good, really good. As were his 20G turbos. I mapped. I think that was on Nomad's Forester today. Actually, it was a Andy Forest 20G, and that, you know, on the Forester with Forester cams, Forester engine, you know, a bigger top mount, but it made 381 at 1.3 bar of boost. So it was, you know, it was more than capable of doing 400 on the right setup. Right, okay, I am going to finish this off now. Oh no, I'm not. Another question come up. Right, fully built EJ205, looking for turbo options, 18G or 20G, and would 1000cc injectors be okay? Right, would 1000cc injectors are big enough for 650 horsepower. 750cc's are good enough for 500 horsepower. I don't know how much breathing room you need, but if it's a 205 open deck block, I wouldn't expect you to be getting up towards the 500 horsepower before the liners sort of go oval on that. Personally, I love the 18G. If it's a proper 18G turbo, I think they're really good. You know, 360, 370, 380 horsepower. They're really responsive, you know, nice delivery of power, hold the boost well. 18G is a good turbo. VF43 48 on that is also a really good turbo. I'd probably go, you know, you probably pay the same amount for 10,000cc injectors as you would for 750s. I'd be tempted to put the thousands in, even though they are oversized in my opinion. Does the amount of ignition alter from a decat versus a 200 cell or 100 versus a 200 cell? Yes. The easiest way to explain that. The more flow that you get through the turbo means that you get fresher air going into the engine, and you're less likely to get sort of random ignition events, i.e. detonation. That doesn't mean it's safe to put a decat on unmapped, but it means that when tuned, you'll be able to add more ignition timing generally with a freer flowing exhaust to one that has got some kind of restriction at the top end. When it can't get the dead air out the engine enough, then you find that it detonates quite heavily. You know, it's an issue that people have with the bolt-in bungs in the exhaust. You know, it makes it silent, but it's like sticking a potato in the exhaust. You know, the engine will destroy itself if you try and run one of those without mapping. AFR wide open throttle target depends on the fuel. 11.4 is a good safe number. It accounts for, you know, temperature variations, you know, climate variations. 11.3, 11.4. You know, you will make slightly more power going slightly leaner. Probably 11.7, 11.8. But There are risks from doing that of temperature variations heating up the fuel, and that makes it run leaner, and then you're into dangerous territory. So 11.3, 11.4, perfect in my view. It's not much of a sacrifice in power to give you a bit of extra safety. If you're running special fuels, then yeah, you can run leaner. But on normal 99 RON fuel in the UK, or 93 RON or 93 AKI fuel in America or the US, or 98 RON in Europe, then yeah, sort of 11.3, 11.4. Right, okay, I think we're done. Any other comments or questions, pop it in the comments below, and I will get back to answering them all. And I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.